Coco Chanel was so much more than her brand. She was a woman of substance, self-belief, flaws, and an attitude that would strip aura points from our modern idea of a baddie. She ran a wildly successful business at a time when women weren't even allowed to own bank accounts. She dressed like men in trousers and suits, then went on to create the little black dress every woman owns. An icon, a disruptor, one of the most fascinating women in history. But she was also deeply controversial, a mistress, a Nazi collaborator, a woman who tried to outmaneuver her own business partners for control and profit. This is the Coco Chanel mindset. The mindset lesson: what to take, what to question, and what never to repeat. Coco was sent to a strict convent orphanage run by nuns, and inside those cold stone walls, she learned something that would quietly change everything: how to sew. The nuns taught it as a domestic skill, but Chanel absorbed it as leverage. What was meant to prepare her for service became her way out. At 18, she stood at a crossroads most girls never face, but she chose the unknown. Instead of expecting access, she studied the system, and that's the uncomfortable truth. Starting with nothing might actually be your superpower because it forces clarity. You don't inherit rules, you learn them. You learn which ones matter and which ones can be broken. And when you grow up without protection, without rules handed to you gently, you don't feel obligated to follow them. You question them. That's where her nonconformity began. In the early 1900s, society had very clear rules for women. Be decorative, be dependent, be quiet, be corseted, literally and socially. Fashion for women was built to contain them. Coco did something unsettlingly simple. She wore what made sense: men's trousers, tailored suits, boater hats, clothing borrowed from male wardrobes and reshaped for a woman who needed to move through the world, not pose in it. When she wore pants in Venice, it caused a public stir. Not because the clothes were outrageous, but because the confidence was. Then she used jersey fabric that was traditionally reserved for men's underwear, soft, flexible, and considered far too informal for women's fashion. She created the little black dress at a time when black was associated with mourning, not elegance. What was once seen as severe or inappropriate became timeless. Coco wasn't rebelling for the sake of rebellion. She was asking a different question. Not, is this allowed? But, does this make sense? She didn't shout against the system. She normalized what the system said was unthinkable, and that made people far more uncomfortable. That mindset still matters. Today, women are still handed invisible scripts: what to want, how ambitious to be, and how much softness or strength is acceptable. We overperform femininity. We dilute our goals to stay likable. We shrink ourselves so our choices feel explainable. But breaking norms only works if you trust yourself enough to stand inside the discomfort it creates. And Coco moved with certainty. And that's only because she trusted her instincts long before she even had evidence. And that's the radical self-belief. However, that did not stop the world from tearing her choices apart all the time. Her designs were dismissed as too simple. She removed corsets when women had been taught to endure discomfort as elegance. She blended masculine and feminine silhouettes in a way that confused people who needed categories to feel safe. And still, she moved forward. She didn't wait until she was certain everyone else would like it. She decided she liked it and refined from there. In her own words, "I don't care what you think about me. I don't think about you at all," sums up how little she cared about anyone's opinions. Now look at the contrast with today's generation, one where we even outsource our confidence. We ask 10 friends. We check the algorithm. We refresh comments. We even ask ChatGPT just to feel allowed to trust what we already know. And after all that, we still hesitate. Because validation has become a substitute for self-belief. We think confidence comes after approval, when in reality, approval often comes after confidence. People miss that certainty itself is persuasive, and it's rarer than ever now. And that rarity is power. Confidence alone, though, isn't freedom. Freedom requires options, and options require money. That's where independence entered the picture. In the early 1900s, a woman openly wanting money, ambition, and autonomy was threatening. To desire independence was to be labeled cold, unfeminine, or morally questionable. But Coco didn't hide her desire. She wanted money. She wanted luxury. She wanted control over her life. And she never romanticized poverty as something noble or character building. That's why she designed for women, not for male approval. Her clothes weren't built to be admired from across a room. They were built to be lived in. She understood something radical for her time. Financial independence equals decision-making power. Without it, freedom is theoretical. Work, for her, was liberation. Every collection, every risk, every expansion gave her more control over her future. She was building something that couldn't be revoked by a marriage, a mood shift, or a social fall from grace. She didn't pursue independence in a single, clean way. She used her talent, yes. She worked relentlessly. But she also leveraged strategic relationships. She chose the life of a mistress not just because the love of her life was a married man, but because she wanted to move within elite circles with his connections. She aligned herself with powerful men when it served her survival and ambition. That doesn't make her choices automatically admirable. It makes them intentional. What I want you to understand is that this isn't about copying her methods. It's about understanding the reality she navigated and the clarity she had about what she wanted. She refused to pretend desire was shameful, even when society punished women for it. The modern translation is about refusing dependence as a default setting, wanting love without surrendering autonomy, wanting luxury without needing permission, wanting options. But independence built on instinct instead of structure has limits. And Coco learned that the hard way. In 1921, Coco launched what would become one of the most famous products in history, Chanel No. 5, and it was a cultural reset. To scale the perfume business, Coco partnered with Pierre Wertheimer, an experienced businessman with the infrastructure she lacked. The deal they signed gave Wertheimer control of the company, and Coco just 10% of the profits from her own creation. At the time, she didn't fully grasp the long-term implications. She had vision, taste, instinct, but not leverage. And once that contract was signed, it followed her for the rest of her life. She spent decades trying to undo it. She sued. She negotiated. She resented Wertheimer deeply. During World War II, she even attempted, unsuccessfully, to use political conditions to reclaim full ownership. But the deal held. This is where the mindset lesson comes into play. Talent is not the same as ownership. Vision does not automatically equal power. And confidence without structural control is fragile. Coco had independence in spirit, but in this one critical area, she lacked protection. This isn't about diminishing her legacy, it's about learning from it. In the modern world, independence is contractual. It's financial literacy. When leverage is missing, people look for shortcuts. And history shows us what happens when ambition meets instability. This is where Coco's story turns uncomfortable. When Nazi Germany occupied Paris, Coco closed her fashion houses but remained in the city. She lived at the Hotel Ritz, which had effectively become Nazi headquarters. During this time, she entered a relationship with a German officer, Hans Günther von Dinklage. Coco was later accused of collaborating with the Nazis. Evidence suggests she attempted to use anti-Semitic laws under German occupation to reclaim full control of Chanel No. 5 from Pierre Wertheimer, who was Jewish. The plan failed. Wertheimer had already safeguarded his ownership, but the intent matters. After the war, Coco was arrested and questioned. She was never formally convicted. Why? No one knows for certain. Some historians believe she was protected by powerful connections, possibly Winston Churchill, whom she knew personally. Others believe evidence was quietly buried. The truth remains unresolved. What is clear is she was not guided by moral purity during this period. She was guided by survival, self-interest, and power. She was unpredictable, strategic, willing to align herself with whoever she believed would help her endure or win. That doesn't make her uniquely evil for her time, but it also doesn't make her defensible. And this is where the framing must shift. Coco's mindset, sharp instincts, self-preservation, refusal to be powerless, did not come with ethical guardrails. And without ethics, mindset alone can rationalize almost anything. Ambition becomes opportunism. Survival becomes justification. Power becomes permission. It's important to say this clearly. Learning from someone does not mean excusing them. Understanding how power operates does not require approval of how it's used. After the war, the cost of those choices came due. Most people would disappear permanently. Coco didn't. After the war, Coco disappeared. Her reputation in France was shattered. The accusations, the rumors, the associations, Paris wanted nothing to do with her. So she exiled herself to Switzerland, living quietly while the world moved on. For nearly a decade, she watched from the sidelines as fashion evolved without her. Many assumed her story was over. She was in her 70s, and that's when she returned. At 71, Coco reopened her fashion house. Critics dismissed her designs as outdated. The press reminded the public of her past. In her home country, she was rejected. But Coco didn't fold. Her collections found a different audience: America. They saw functionality, ease, confidence. Hollywood embraced her. Public figures wore her designs. This is deeply relatable. Outgrowing versions of yourself. Starting over later than planned. Wanting a new era without asking permission for it. Reinvention isn't lying about who you were. It's deciding who you will be next. And this is where her story stops being about history and starts being about discernment. Because the lesson isn't to admire her. It's to extract what works and leave the rest behind. Learning from Coco does not mean copying her choices. It means extracting principles, then deciding consciously what belongs in your life and what does not. A mindset is a tool, not a personality. What's worth adopting is her self-trust. Coco moved before consensus existed. In a world that constantly asks you to justify your decisions, learning to move with quiet certainty is a competitive advantage. Her strategic thinking matters too. Coco observed power before she tried to enter it. You don't need to become Coco Chanel. You don't need her chaos, her contradictions, or her ethics. What you need is a clear perception. A mindset is a map, not a destination. Use it to orient yourself, then choose your own route. That's the real legacy. I would like to end this video with probably one of my most favorite quotes from Chanel. A girl should be two things, who and what she wants. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're still insecure, still searching, still unsure who you are, the Cassie Howard mindset might hit closer than you expect. Watch it right here.